and I knew I was not going to be able to stop, and so I had to swerve around her, run the red light, and she's like yelling at me like, "What the fuck?" And it's just like, "Lady, I just saved your life. You don't even know." Like,
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, two things. One, I have new sponsorship rates starting as low as $20. Two, I started a new subscription through PayPal for $1 a month in case there's people out there that didn't want to start a Patreon account. To do the sponsorship, you can just email me at thiswasthescene@gmail.com. You can click the link in the show notes, or you can go to my Instagram and click on the link in the description, and there's a button in there for the PayPal thing. All of it goes to keeping this thing alive, so much appreciated if you do it. Dana Bollen is a podcaster, tour manager, merch guy, cowbeller, and a ton more. You may have seen him around the country and he was selling merch or tour managing or just, I don't know, fucking hanging out with Story So Far, Piebalds, Unearth, and a shit ton of other bands. He's currently on tour with this band called Poppy, so if you are going to any of those shows, when he starts selling some merch for them, you can see him and say hello. This is a different format from the normal interviews because Dana has his own podcast called 2 Week Notice Podcast. So basically it's the two of us talking about the scene and behind the scenes of our podcasts. And it's basically just two dudes being dudes. So if you want a real behind the scenes of our podcast, then this is for you. If not, you may still enjoy it. But I got Dana on the Skype, and this is what we chat about. Showing up to Piebalds' 2016 reunion with a cowbell, currently being on the road with Poppy, getting a ton of his episodes taken down, both of us interviewing Max Bemis, our thoughts on Furnace Fest coming back, Jeremy from A Day to Remember giving the real story about suing Victory, his undying love for Piebald, being a cowbell aficionado, he's going to hate that I said that, his breaks going out while driving on tour, and a ton more. Make sure you check out his new 6-part mini-series podcast called Live Free or DIY that will be hitting the streaming services this April, which we are currently in, or May. I'm going to mention this again when it comes out, so you'll be reminded. It's about the DIY punk hardcore music scene, and they have a panel that includes Norm from Texas Is the Reason, Luke from Piebald, Chris from Bridge 9 Records, Ace from Early November, Joey from Koyo, Brandon from Vanna, and a shit ton more. Keep on a lookout for that, and also go follow his podcast, 2 Week Notice. You can just find it wherever you podcast. Lastly, if you're frustrated that people don't get what you do, I can solve that with a 60-second explainer animation with my company, which is me, drive80.com, drive80.com. Do explainer videos, logo animations, and whiteboard animations, so you can just email me at mike@drive80.com for more info. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started.
all right, I always mix up First Ever with 100 Words or Less. One of them's the Touche Amore guy. They're both great podcasts.
Yeah, the First Ever, that's the Touche Amore. I'm so jealous sometimes when I see podcasts out there with people they're in bands and they know everyone because they'll get the guests on where I'm like, I've been trying for so long to get this person, and then they or like we've been kind of conversing, or I've sent them a message and then they're on this other person's podcast. I'm always like, son of a bitch.
Are we rolling right now?
Yeah, man, we're rapping.
Okay. I get the same way, but also like I root for that person. When you got Max Bemis, dude, I was like, oh man, that dude was on my list from the beginning. I would not have got him if it weren't for you, so thank you. I know exactly what you I know exactly how you feel.
I mean, there is actually, before we start, I am going to do this in the show notes, but I just want to introduce you really quickly because this is going outside of the scope, kind of, even though you're very relevant in the scene now, and you tour manage Piebald, you do a lot of merch for like Bayside, Joyce Manor. Who else are you doing that for?
Well, I've never actually sold merch for Joyce Manor directly.
So are you just doing their tour management?
No, so I was on a tour. I know why you think that because I listened to your Neil Hennessy episode, which I loved. I was on a tour with Joyce Manor. It was The Story So Far, Joyce Manor, Mom Jeans, and Microwave. And I was working for The Story So Far. You guys were talking about, you said my name, and I was like, oh, snap. Appreciated the shout out. But yeah, I was working for the story so far, but that wasn't even the tour that because you and we haven't even met in person still.
No,
But
which is so
I
funny.
feel like we've been like friends or homies, for a few years.
Yeah.
And I just want to say out the gate that your podcast was like the first scene podcast that I really got into.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Quick sidetrack. So I was in Europe, not on tour, but I was just like
Traveling because you sold everything, or no, you traveling because you quit your corporate job and toured for 4 months.
precisely. That was the first time I started podcasting. And I did like a travel log in Europe. It was under a different name. So I started podcasting and just kind of like Bill Burr style, like how he just rambles by himself. I was kind of doing that, but not nearly as funny because I'm Bill Burr's the GOAT.
Yeah, yes.
So, so but that was like my inspiration. I just remember I was on like a cruise ship at the time, somewhere in like, I don't know, Scandinavia or something. Your podcast with John Cheese popped up. Like I think I saw it on John Cheese's Instagram. And I vividly recall listening to that interview like while I was laying in my like stateroom on a boat while you like listening to you talking to John Cheese. And that was 2019.
I think so. Yeah, I can look that up. I forget when it. He was right. He was right in the beginning.
And there's so many great like scene podcasts you brought up first ever. There's so many great ones out there. The fact that you kind of mentioned you gauged something off of my show, I'm not one to gauge off of. It's, there's so many better ones out there, yours included. To just be on this now, well, 6 years later, is an honor. So thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Sincerely,
dude. Fuck yeah.
I
No, that's really
I
nice.
I admire you and your show, and I, have been a Lane Meyer fan forever as well. So to like be on here talking, when I reached out to you, I was like, dude, it's okay to say no, like because I get it. Like sometimes people hit me up, and it's just I'm backed up anyway.
Well, we originally, when I went on yours, we, I was like, hey man, like I would have you on. It doesn't really fit the molds just because I'm talking bands from back then. But like since we've talked for so long, and the majority of the episodes are gonna be like talking to bands and producers back then. But I was excited or I am excited for this one because I feel like this is just gonna be such a even when I was starting this, I was like, I don't really know where I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna do it down the same path. But even though like you pretty much got involved in the scene in like 2015 when you started managing Piebald, was that right? Or no, because it was 2018 because if you were on the cruise, you started managing them after you traveled Europe, and then we're just gonna dip into that and we're gonna jump back into.
Well, to the first tour I did with Piebald, and at this point I was not tour manager. It was 2016.
You were a cowbell guy.
I showed up. Yeah, I showed up at their reunion set with a cowbell in 2016.
I love that so much.
And that's why I listened to the John Cheese episode because John Cheese is like my forefather. He's my hero. He used to tour manage Piebald and sell merch for them, and he even played the cowbell for them before me, like 20 years ago. So if John Cheese didn't exist, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. John Cheese and shout out Ryan McGaffigan because both of those guys did those things for Piebald before me. So
I don't remember. Did he mention doing the cowbell thing when he was touring for them? I don't think he did.
I don't think it was a regular thing. I don't know how many times he did it. I don't think because he all right. So John Cheese like started selling merch with Piebald at one of their big shows at the Hat Shell in Boston. Like it's this like free. It looks like a big clamshell. You know what like a hat shell is?
No.
Basically, it's like a free outdoor amphitheater thing.
Oh yeah, I've seen those before.
Green Day played at the Boston Hat Shell, and it like made headlines because so many like way more people showed up than they. I wasn't there, but way more people showed up than they expected. I've seen like Less Than Jake there. I want to say maybe Dashboard played there. So, but basically, like I think that was Cheese's first Piebald gig, like selling merch for them, or one of them. Piebald went on to tour with My Chemical Romance. They scooped him up. The rest is history for Cheese. Like he went on to do My Chem for a bit. He did he still does Limbeck when they do stuff. He did Warp Tour and all this stuff. So Cheese will hit me up once in a while he listens to like 2 week notice, and he'll be like, bro, I feel like I'm like living vicariously through you. Like you would have been so good on Warped Tour, kind of, he'll just hit me up and say hi, like when he'll hear something I do, and he's just like, man, like I wish I was still out there, kind of thing. So,
But now he's like dad of the year.
well, now it's funny because that dude, shout out John Cheese,
Shout out John Cheese.
dude, he has three certified gold records in his name for selling, like slinging those Warped Tour compilations. I think it was oh 04, 05, and 06. And nobody sold more of those compilations than he did on the Warped Tour. Like, and now he's selling real estate, so it's very fitting. It's just so perfectly fitting. He's just a great salesman.
That dude's name comes up so much in interviews. It surprises me. Even there was someone recently he said his name. I could swear it was like Jim Ward or something. I was like, what the fuck?
Dude, the best, one of my favorite like unexpected John Cheese moments. So Piebald played Best Friends Forever in Vegas this past October. The Get Up Kids played like a couple sets after us, right? And they had just got off stage and they were getting off the stage. I had just given him like an extra all access wristband that I had specifically for him because I knew he was going to be there. And he just got backstage and we had parted ways. And I was like, John Cheese, like I just yelled his name out. And the drummer of the Get Up Kids, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he heard me say that. He goes, John Cheese, where's John Cheese? It's just like those two just beeline to each other and just had this like reunion. And then I kind of walked away, but it was so perfect. I was like, that sounds about right, you know? Yeah. So that dude is one of those unsung heroes in my mind that will never get enough credit, even though he does have 3 certified gold records. I'm not a salesman in that kind of way. Like that is legendary shit.
I mean, all you gotta do, it's such an easy, like a friend of mine, she is a bartender in town. It sounds like the simplest thing, but she'll go up to tables when they're halfway done and say, "Hey, would you like another one?" And the majority of bartenders around here just sit behind the bar until, and they're all, nice and stuff, but it's just that little effort that increases her sales and she makes more tips. Just someone coming up to the table and just like not giving a shit and just saying like, "Hey, what's up?" Because it's like one of those things where you go to like a flea market. I don't even call them anymore, like a pop-up market now. You walk into someone's tent and they're like, "Hi," and you kind of look on the ground. You're like, "Oh, hey." You don't really want to see them because you're not sure. They're like, "I'm not buying anything." So it's like, how do you just not even give a shit when they walk by the merch table and say like, "Hey, nice shoes," or "Oh, that band sucks," or something like that that's funny that gets their attention, and that just that little bit will get people to come over, and you're gonna increase those sales, dude.
More sales equals more tips.
Yeah, you get tips on tour, right?
I do. Well, I mean, I'm currently on tour where I'm primarily just driving. I haven't sold merch yet. I think I'm gonna on a couple gigs. Like, you gotta also forgive me because I'm in like my brain is like fried. So I'm driving a box truck overnight for Poppy. I've been very lucky, Mike Doyle. Okay, because like until nothing against Poppy, I just didn't know her music. I still don't know it well. Every band I've toured with up until this point has been a band that I've already been like a massive fan of. So like I've toured with Thrice, the Front Bottoms, Bayside, Alkaline Trio, Piebald, Hot Rod Circuit, Unearth. 20 years ago, would not have believed this. Sometimes I'm just driving a truck. Oftentimes I'm driving a truck and selling merch or just selling merch. And sometimes I tour manage. Sometimes I fucking play the cowbell. But it all started with Piebald.
I did put it in to ChatGPT. I've been starting to use AI more just because it's like I'm not gonna get left behind. I was like, "Do you know who Dana Bollen is?" It was like, "Yeah," and it gave me the whole thing. I'm like, "What would you like to know?" So it actually gave me some questions, and I was like, or some ideas, and I was like, "These are actually pretty fucking good." But I mean, the normal thing, anyone's listening to this who has been listening, it's always like, how'd you get involved in the scene and all this stuff. But I feel like it's you getting involved in the scene we're already at the point where we're talking about like what you do now, and I figure like it can just kind of go in a direction, and I'll just kind of jump in here and there with some things that I want to add on to it. But Poppy, you're not a fan, so go on. I was
Well,
kidding.
I can't, I'm not saying I'm not a fan. Honestly, I haven't seen the show yet.
Well, do you have to, by driving the truck, is that kind of a rite of passage to go from there to the merch table? Like they're kind of putting you through the ringer to see if you're worthy or something?
No, so what I mean, the merch world is so interesting and it's like its own could be long conversation, but they have a merch guy. His name is Jared. He's awesome. He's on the bus. When I do these box truck gigs, what's very interesting is like I'm the only person in the crew that is not on the bus. So it can be a very isolating gig. The bus driver and I always have a special bond because we're the ones grinding it out, driving overnight from fucking Denver to Salt Lake, and just like, you've toured a lot. You understand like that grind.
Yeah, I don't understand how you possibly do this. It blows my mind.
Well, I mean, all right. So I worked in the corporate world for about a decade before I was touring, and I was working overnight a lot and driving overnight a lot all around New England. Fucking New England kid.
Fucking kid.
We have that Lynn bond as
Yes,
well.
we do. I did make a note. I thought you did something that was brilliant, and I want to know how you did it. So I think some of this, anyone listening, people listening, I think this is gonna, again, it's gonna be pretty loose, but we are gonna talk about, we're talking about the scene, we're talking about podcasts. I might ask him podcasting tips since we're like both in that world. People listening to your podcast will listen to this too, so it's like, I don't know. I don't know what everyone wants to hear, but you did something where you did on Reddit, you put your transcript of Max Bemis on there, the conversation. I thought that was fucking brilliant. How did you do that? Did you pay like that? What's that service? Or how'd you get the transcript?
I did not do that.
You didn't do that?
No,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do because every once in a while I'll go on Reddit. You can judge me for this, it's okay. But I like to know if people are talking about my show.
Oh, dude, I do that all the time. I'll put like, does
Okay.
anyone give a shit about this? Actually, I just found something about myself on Ivy, and he did a write-up. It was really nice. He got something wrong though, but or the person got it wrong. But yeah. So wait, how did that get on there?
Someone else who is like a massive Max Bemis fan slash hater. It's very interesting because the dude who someone else transcribed it. I don't know who it was. It was just some random person on Reddit, and they started a thread. There's still a whole thread on there about it, and people shit on Max a lot and me as well. And they were like the quote unquote host, was fanboying out and like said, which is true, like I was. But yeah, someone else did that. It was not me. I never thought of it from the angle that you did with it being like brilliant, to be honest. But I can't take credit for it.
Well, when I did, because I was like looking up, I was just putting it in Google to see what pops up. Because like if I put mine in, it'll go like my website comes up, so that's has all the every episode because I wanted to make it searchable because I figured that podcasts weren't searchable, but I was wrong because they all show up in Google. But it showed up on there, so I was like, oh my God, that's pretty smart. I mean, you can use services, or I think you can even use Premiere now, which I edit with, and it'll bust out a transcript and give you the whole thing, and then you can just upload it. But like, I don't know, I guess I'm the kind of person that I think like I'm not gonna read all that shit, but there's people out there that will. But either way, Google's scrubbing the internet and it's finding that. So this came up on page one.
Yeah, I mean, well, I should have a website that's been on my list for a while.
It hasn't been
There's a
a
lot.
I mean, the only benefit with that has been selling merch, but my merch store has been like fucked for the last 6 months and I didn't realize it. It's not like connecting with shipping or whatever, but I wouldn't say that's been the biggest help. It's usually just been people referring to each other, or someone looking up a guest and all of a sudden it pops up. So that's probably been the same for you.
But I still think it's a thing that you should do. Like it's something I should have done a long time ago. There's a lot of things I should be doing them that I'm not. Like I should be on YouTube, but I'm not because like there's a lot of people who intake their podcast, whether or not they actually watch. I think a lot of people will play a podcast on YouTube and put it on their TV and play it in the background and like clean and stuff. But maybe just like look up once in a while and you can like see the people. I do keep the video as well. And once in a while, I'll do like a Instagram reel, but it's like it takes me so fucking long. Just as you know, dude, like just editing the audio is so
Yeah.
much work.
Yeah, man.
That's why I encourage anybody. Go ahead, try a podcast, try it. And there's a lot of people who don't edit at all, and that I've had people say like, "Oh, like I don't edit. I just keep it real. I want it to be real." It's like, all right, well, I keep it real too. I'm not manipulating the conversation, but I want it to be clean.
Well, you have to cut out the so's, the ums, the likes, or you would, as me as a listener, when I'm listening to when they edit, I would bail about 3 minutes into the episode if I had to hear that all the time. It's like you have to get rid of that shit.
Dude, 100%, I'm with you. I cut out the breaths.
Yeah, same.
I get psycho about it. One episode will take me a full works week, I would say.
Oh, wow. Really?
I am slow. If I have OCD, which I might, it definitely flares up when I'm editing a podcast for sure. The better I get at editing, the longer it takes me to do, if that makes any sense.
I've actually had the opposite. I've become really fast. I mean, I'm also you're doing video. Well, no, you have the video. You just do
Yeah,
the
but
audio.
I
Yeah.
don't really use it. And I get that's kind of the point I was getting at is it's like it takes me so long to edit just the audio that it's like, dude, and just like trying to make an Instagram reel, like I tested it out when I interviewed. I did one with Tades from Hot Mulligan. It's on my Instagram. You can see it. It took me a couple hours just to do that.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like how much time do I have? But I know I am leaving something on the table by not being on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all my stuff I luck out because Libsyn, it automatically puts it wherever I want to. So it uploads because I'll put a static image for YouTube, so I have every episode's on YouTube, even though, and which is the good thing is that they'll live on there forever. They won't take away episodes. Streaming services like Spotify or Apple, they only keep the first 100 episodes. So anything past, like I'm on 253 right now, so anything past before 152 is like off of streaming services.
I noticed that because as a fan of your show, I tried to listen to the John Cheese episode before this for old time's sake, just to prep myself, and it wasn't there. Because you're talking about like what you use to distribute the episodes.
Yeah, where it hosts the audio. So it's kind of like with Spotify, it doesn't host on Spotify. There's a service that hosts the music and it shoots it to Spotify.
Or Apple Podcasts or Amazon or all that stuff. But what gets a little confusing is the host that I use, it's called Spotify for Podcasters, which is it used to be called Anchor. So Spotify bought that and it's now Spotify for Podcasters. This is like super podcast nerd talk, but it's called Spotify for Podcasters, which people confuse for actual Spotify. It's different. This is a specifically for just distributing podcasts to all the platforms. And it's free because Anchor was free, so they just inherited that. I just got an email, dude. I shouldn't even bring this up, but I just got an email saying that that 54 of my episodes are breaking copyright infringement.
I thought that
And that
happened
they're
to you last year because you had like minute-long clips of songs. So I remember when I heard that in an episode, I was like, "Oh, you're gonna get fucked," and then it happened.
wait, you listened to my show?
Yeah, I listened to a couple of like when we were doing it, I heard some episodes, and I was like, "Listen, I stray from listening to other punk podcasts just because I fucking interview all the time, and I'm so sometimes if it's someone who the guy from Me Without You was on the first ever podcast, and I've never heard anything from him. And I was like, I have to hear this guy. And he's like, he does not disappoint. He's so funny. Yeah, like you would have a full song in the beginning, and I was like, oh, dude, they're gonna totally flag him. And then I saw your post. You're like, I got fucked. I was like, shit, man.
Yeah, and that was like a couple of years ago, and they caught up with the rest, which I knew this day was going to come.
Ugh.
I just got the email a few days ago, and they were like, "You have 192 hours to respond," or so. Like, I still gotta sort that out.
Oh
I
man.
have like a really quick shortcut way to like get around it, which is kind of just like putting a band-aid. Like, if they'll take it down, and I know how to. All you have to do is just go into like the description of the episode and just change one character. You could just add a space and hit save, and it'll repost it, and that would buy me some time. At least that worked last time.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like it's just the song that's the copyright infringement, right?
Correct. Yeah. So basically, it's because I'm using songs that I get permission from. Like, I always ask the person off the recording, like, "Hey, is it cool if I play some songs?" And 90% of the time, they're like, "Oh yeah, please do. Like, play the new stuff," or I'll even ask them like, "What do you want me to play?" Sometimes they're like, "Oh, play the hits, dude."
Yeah, but they're not the legal entity, the whoever's hosting it,
Right.
and then Facebook or YouTube and whatever they have the bots that listen, and then that flags it right away.
Precisely.
Yeah, and actually, a friend of mine, Tom Simon, he worked for a company that created that technology, and then Facebook bought his company. So, thanks, Tom Simon, for doing
Well,
that.
I mean, I can't even get mad at it because that's genius.
It is pretty genius.
I also just want to add, I had Mike Weiss from Me Without You on my podcast a couple of years ago.
He's a singer, right?
No, he plays guitar. So there's the two brothers. There's Aaron, who sings, Aaron Weiss, and Mike Weiss plays guitar. And I had Mike on the podcast like right before they broke up. And even at that time, while they were active, they were like, "No Me Without You" podcasts. And that episode was like in the top downloads for me for a very long time. Like, that was a big episode for me. And because those fans are so diehard, that I get it. Like, that I don't, do you like them? I love them.
I've mentioned this a few times recently. I just got into them within like the last year or so because to the point of this podcast, which I've said fucking multiple times, it was just bands from that era who had the swoopy hair and the dance moves and it's just the fucking idiots that I hated. I would hear their band name and I would think like, oh, this probably is one of those bands. So I put those guys in that years ago and just was like, I wouldn't listen to them. And then January 1979 came on, and I was like, holy shit,
Dude, Me Without You is
they're so good.
so, that's a special, special band.
Dude, that album with that song, I forget the name of it, Catch for Us the Foxes.
Catch Us with the Foxes. That's the one.
So I go to this record store all the time, but they have that the vinyl version of that on the wall, and it's $100, and I've been staring at it for like 6 months. I'm like, do I want to pull the trigger on that shit? Like, is it worth it? Because I have a limit. Like 45 is like my max, unless I really fucking love the band. Like I bought the Rival Schools release of United by Fate as with that big ass book, and it was $100, and I was like, I kind of need this.
Is that the most you've ever spent on like a record?
Yeah, $100 is like I've done that. I think just that one time. I did get the Say Anything re-release of Is a Real Boy, but I don't know how much I spent on that. That was pretty dope.
I don't think it would have been that much.
No, it has definitely has a flaw in the art because it has what is it? You know how the CD had like the buzzsaw blade as the art. So they have it. The book it's this really thick like holder, and it's inside of this die cut, and the die cut of the cover is that blade. So when you go to put it into with your other records, it catches every time. So it like bends it. I'm like, son of a fuck.
Oh, that's whack.
Yeah. Do you collect vinyl?
I do. I do. That's one of my, Is a Real Boy is one of my favorite records of all time. And like, I bought that CD before, because you remember they did Was a Real Boy with like Wow I Can Get Sexual Too. It was like an EP annex to Is a Real Boy, and then they started selling the CD as like a double CD. I got it. I remember getting it before Was a Real Boy was a thing. I saw them at the ICC church in Boston, a church in Boston that holds a few hundred people, and they were on tour with the Bled. I remember the Bled, James Munoz, the singer of the Bled, he like lost his voice or got sick or something, and the Bled couldn't play that show. I was super bummed because I love that band. The trade off for that show, Say Anything played all of Is a Real Boy that night and like played some like old stuff, and it was like as they were blowing up or like right before they like really blew up. And I sound like a hipster right now, like, oh, I saw them before they were,
I got into them like 05, 06. Yeah, so that was like right as they were, because I was like, who the fuck is this band? And I heard the first song, I heard Belt, and I was like, I'm sold. And then I kept listening to the whole record. I was like, holy fuck, it's so good. Funny thing, because we've both interviewed him, that was one of my getting him on and talking to him was one of my favorite things, because I mentioned to him that Cemetery. So I've been divorced now for 11 years, but when I got married, Cemetery was the song we danced to, and then we ended with the song by Isley. That so his wife, when she was in Isley, they had this song, was on their first album, I think. And I was like, yeah. So we open the wedding to us dancing to Cemetery, and we close it, and Cemetery is about him and Sherry. And then I was like, and we close it to we were dancing to that song. It's like, congratulations, because we made it. And I was like, that was our ending song. He's like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah, I'm excited to get to tell you that, because that was a huge part of my history. So it's like before, when you were saying, when you're talking to these bands, you're touring with these bands, like 20 years ago, you was excited. We both get to have that where we're like, I have to tell you this. This has been with me for decades.
Yeah, man. I literally just got goosebumps just listening to that, and I connect with that because so you connected me. It was a weird. It took like from when you connected me to his contact, he had changed management, and I don't remember exactly. I think I hit up the person you connected me to, but then they didn't work together anymore. It like started to get set up, and like a year or a year and a half went by, and he was with someone else. And I don't do this often. I think I've done it 2 or 3 times because I do the Piebald Instagram,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and he started like following Piebald, and like I don't like to do it because I don't want to take advantage. I don't, because there's a bunch of people that follow Piebald that I would love to have on the podcast, but I don't want to be like, hey, like, I don't want to just like use that as, I like to do it on my own to get guests, right? But this was a situation where it's like I was already supposed to have him on, and that person that you connected me to was like, I don't work for Max anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was just like, fuck it. And I sent a message from the Piebald Instagram, and I was just like, hey, dude, I want to have you on my podcast. That was like how it, I think, ultimately happened. But basically, long story short, it was a year or a year and a half. But he hit me up. It was like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a night owl, so I don't mind. But in this moment, I was super sick. I had like the flu or whatever. And he was just like, I got some time right now if you want to rip. And I was just like, oh my God. Like I literally had just laid down. I had a fever of like, I think I talked about it when I interviewed him. Like, I got a fever right now. But I didn't care. Like I felt like it was a bad interview on my part just because I wasn't the best version of myself. But it was just like, there was no way I was going to not try to take advantage of that moment. We still text once in a while, Max and I. But what was also cool was like, I had never met him in person, but then I've crossed paths with him so many times since then. Like, because I was on tour with the Front Bottoms, we played Red Rocks, and the Say Anything was opening, and that was when I met him. Like, we hugged it out.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, yeah, dude. I don't know. We were texting like right before that, the day before. I was just like, dude, like, can't wait to see you tomorrow, meet you tomorrow, whatever. And that was a pretty big comeback for Say Anything. It was, I think they had done a few shows.
What year was this?
This would have been August 2023. And then also like Piebald almost ended up on that Say Anything That Is a Real Boy tour. Like Piebald was contacted like, hey, we're doing a couple of legs. Are you available for this leg or that leg? Which one would you want to do? Like it seemed like we were going to get the tour, and it didn't work out. I mean, that's just like business. That's how it goes. And they got AJJ, which is so underrated. I don't know if you're into him or them.
Real quick, if you're needing an explainer video, that's what I do for a living. My company is drive80.com. You can email me at mike@drive80.com for some samples and pricing. Industries that I've created explainer animations for over the last 14 years are tech, software, medical, pharma, recruiting, nonprofits, accounting, ed tech, and more. That's all I'm going to say. So now back to the show. Wait, who was that again? What's the full...
AJJ.
Yeah. Okay. They came through town here, and there's like I go to a lot of bars and coffee shops around town. So some kid had a shirt on, and I was like, "What is this?" They're like, "Oh my God, this band you gotta check out." Andrew Jackson Jihad.
There you go. There you go. And I had just toured with them because they were opening for the Front Bottoms.
Oh,
So
I
it's just
fucking
like,
saw them. Sorry, go on. I saw them. I think they did open for the because I went to the Say Anything show last year when they came through
yes,
Raleigh.
they opened.
Yeah, they were really good.
Yes, so underrated. But like those who know, like know kind of thing. I mean, they played like when we were young. They had this set during like Blink or something, and I was watching them. Like I had just toured with them, like I said. So I'm like, I'm gonna stand right up front and watch these dudes because they're rad as fuck. But that was almost piebald. Part of me wishes it was because that would have been a cool tour. And the first time I saw Say Anything, the tour was actually it was Say Anything, Me Without You, Piebald.
Oh my God.
Yeah, at the Worcester Palladium, kid.
Oh, the Boston accent. It's so dear to me. My dad had it. He like until he died, like he had the Boston accent. He lived in Jersey forever, in Delaware, in Texas, and he like always had. He'd be like, "Oh, that's super."
Dude, it's fucking super.
Since you're talking about, again, this is just gonna go all over the place, and I don't give a shit. Since you're talking about festivals, what are your thoughts on Furnace Fest coming back? After making it very clear that it was going away, and I heard that it was four partners. I know this is also, again, like you don't. I'm not asking you to talk shit or anything like that, and I know that you are very embedded in that, and I, from the outside, can be like, I think it's fucking stupid. But there was four partners. They kicked two out or two left, and they're like, "We're redoing this." And I was like, "Man, you guys ended it. Like there was a marketing campaign the last year, and they're like, oh, by the way." So, what are your thoughts?
First of all, you know what I love about you and your podcast, Mike Doyle?
I don't give a shit.
You're whether or not you admit it, you're great at getting the dirt.
Well, I'm just like speaking mine, and like when I ask someone a question, I'm never expecting them to be where I'm at. I've had a really good time where I haven't had guests that they come on like with a persona and they try to sell this thing, and like even if that has happened, which is I think been like super rare, I'll really try to get them to be like, calm down, talk as a normal person, and then you can hear where the non-scripted thing comes off, or the answer that they've been given through years because they've been interviewed by so many people. I'm like, all right, how do I get around that where they're like, and you can hear it, like too, when you ask a question, they're like, yeah, and it's like when they stop to think about it, it's like, oh, okay, like now this is where I got the conversation where I want it to be. That's what I like to do.
No, there's a big difference between like there are moments where you forget that you're interviewing and you're just talking back and forth. And then there are moments when you're like, all right, it's time to insert a question because there's like this weird pause or stop or something like that.
Yeah, it has to be a flow though. Like you got to get it to flow.
You have to. You're great at it. You always have been.
Thanks, buddy.
But you like I think there's a difference where like what I've always loved about yours, like one of my favorite episodes, a lot of my favorite episodes of your show, and I'm not dodging your question.
I was like, nice dodge, but I know he's not dodging it.
A lot of my favorite episodes of yours are the people who it's not the Max Bemis, it's not Jim Ward, it's like like Monica of Victory Records. I listened to it like 3 times because it was like so good. Stop me if I'm going like too far off the rails. The singer Jeremy of A Day to Remember.
Yeah, I know Dana. Remember, I haven't listened to any episodes with him though, or any interviews with him.
So he was on Shane Told's podcast, the lead singer Syndrome, and he told the story of them suing Victory because they were the dudes who won. They won. They're the reason they won. It was just such a victory for the scene and like for all those bands that got fucked. And he told that story like I mean it's like a normal interview throughout the most, but like towards the end of that episode, what sparked me to listen to it was I was on tour with the Story So Far last summer. We did a shed tour. We hit Red Rocks and like arenas and stuff, and
Okay, and
it
I
was
just want to point, I fucking love that band, by the way. But go on.
the Story So Far.
Yeah, not like the newer stuff.
They're so
I'm
good.
kind of like a little bit about, but
they're undeniable.
The album where he got sober and they have that
Proper
20
Dose.
Property, that I loved that. The one before that, the blue one, I was like, Quicksand, or the one with Quicksand or whatever. But anyway, you're on tour with them.
I've had the pleasure of working for The Story So Far twice. They were the first band I toured with and worked for that was not Piebald. They're a big deal to me. I worked for them again last summer, and it was A Day to Remember, The Story So Far, 4 Years Strong, and then there was a fourth band each night, but it was like a three-way split for like the opener. It was Military Gun, who I love. I love all of them. Military Gun, Pain of Truth, and Scowl. So it's just this awesome, awesome tour. But I didn't know much about A Day to Remember either. I'm driving around. I found this podcast episode with Jeremy from A Day to Remember, and you need to listen to that.
Yeah, I'm saving it to Spotify right
Because
now.
he tells the story, and it's incredible of like how they sued Victory and how they won. It was one of my favorite pieces of any podcast episode I've ever listened to, especially after listening to like your episode with Monica or something. But
Going back to Furnace Fest.
Yes. Well, that was a long way to say you're good at like getting. I like how you get these niche people who talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff that I appreciate. But yeah, Furnace Fest. I mean, here's the deal, man. Like, I've gone every year since the rebirth. So all 4 years in a row. Two of those were with Piebald because Piebald played it twice. Two of those were on my own. I love those guys. It broke my heart. Like you said, there were four partners. And Ryan Luther, who was one of the dudes who is no longer part of it, he was the one behind the scenes always championing for Piebald to be on the festivals. So that dude is near and dear to my heart, and it bums me out that he's not part of it. But, whatever went down is none of my business. I don't know what happened, but I'm still going to go. Like I got 10 Yard Fight on the festival this year.
Oh, shit.
So I mean, I don't know. Do you know 10 Yard Fight? Like legendary Boston hardcore, like straight edge.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know.
I mean, I heard about them when Travis mentioned them in a Piebald song on like on Venetian Blinds, I think.
Yeah, it's that's Stewart singing, not Travis. But yeah, it's Grace Kelly with Wings, the first track on
Yeah,
Venetian
that was
Blinds.
it. Yep.
He mentions 10 Yard Fight and In My Eyes. I'm impressed with your Piebald knowledge.
Oh, dude, I was a huge Piebald fan back in the day. Like I got the first record, Life Hands You Lemons. I read about them. I got into the scene and started getting into zines. There was this article about Piebald, and I was like, I was just like a sponge back then. I'm like, who is this band? So I ended up getting that, and my ears were too like into the sugary SoCal thing. So when I got Life Hands You Lemons, I think I'm saying that right. I was like, okay, this is a bit too aggressive. And then when Venetian Blinds came out, because I got Actuality of Thought, the video comp, I saw them playing the video. It's like Caven's playing and Travis is playing with them. But when they're playing Grace Kelly, that wasn't on anything. So Venetian Blinds comes out, I was like, oh, that fucking song's on there. And then the rest of the CD I just like absolutely loved. And then Lanemeyer, we got to play a bunch of shows with Piebald, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. I was a huge fan.
They're the best band in the world.
They were so hilarious. Like one of my favorite shows. So we played with them one time in like, I don't even say Maryland or something. It was some local show. Then I saw them at Maxwell's in New Jersey. I think they just played. I was living there in 2007 to 2010, so at some point in there they played a show there. I think the Sox were in the series, and Travis was like, he is the end of the song, and he's like, yeah, he's like, fuck the Yankees, go Sox, and he like breaks into it, and I was like, dude, you're so fucking funny and hilarious.
Piebald, they're the best. Like they're the best band in the world. I would not be talking to you right now if it weren't for that band. What other band can you just show up with a cowbell and then fast forward be like tour manager? If I did that with like, I don't know, Taking Back Sunday, they'd be like, all right, weirdo, like fuck, like get, you know what I mean? Get
Well, you
out
know
of
why
here.
it worked
Like,
though? You know why I think it worked is because, so you said John Cheese used to do that originally, right?
and Ryan McGaffigan.
Okay, so there's a throwback to them being used to that, but also I feel like those guys have such an odd sense of humor. Me and my friends have like some weird shit that we find the most fucked up things funny, or just like something really off where there was always those kids in high school, they were laughing at something. I was like, I'm not that funny. What are they laughing at? It's like you want to get the joke, and then later on in life, it's like you kind of develop it, and you're like, oh, I get it. I feel like maybe they saw that and they're like, this is fucking hilarious. And then they got to know you, and then they probably were like, do you want to come tour manage or something?
Well, I kept like finding my way, even when I didn't have credentials. Like I was taking my paid vacation from the corporate job I was working, because they would only tour like 1 week here, like on the way to Riot Fest, 1 week here on the way to Boston Calling, or something like that. So it wasn't. I was just always. I was at every single show that they did, you know, upon them reuniting. Yeah, I was just very persistent, and I just somehow always found my way to the green room without credentials, you know? I think Aaron and Luke loved it right away. It took a minute for me to win over Travis and Andy, to be honest. I mean, they went with it and it was cool, but when I first showed up, the best part was like they made me audition
For the
for
cowbell?
yeah, yeah, for a position that like wasn't even like an opening for the band. Like they weren't seeking out a cowbell player, you know.
Okay. I love
But I
it.
showed up with the cowbell in LA, and they're like, "All right, well, we got to make sure you can do it." That was Aaron Stewart, and he was just like, "All right." He's like, "All right, you got to do it during sound check," and I was like, "All right." And I've never been more nervous. I played Boston Calling in front of like whatever 40,000 people or something like that, or like Furnace Fest, or all these like some of these big shows, and but when I was like auditioning, I was shaking. I was so nervous. Just for the ones, it's just one song, which is called The Stalker, which is ironic because I was like stalking them. But
Well, I mean, you got the
I
dance moves.
nailed it.
You got the butt shake when you do it. You got the style. I've seen the videos.
Well, dude, I honestly am at the point where I really don't like the attention anymore. I hate the videos. I can't watch them. I find them very cringy.
Interesting. Okay.
And I have a really, yeah, there once in a while there's one I'm like, all right, that's a good one. But like you got to snip it on both ends. Like there's a good section in there. I'm at the point where I like doing the behind the scenes stuff. I like tour managing because I feel like that's a really good way, like something I'm good at and that I can really contribute in a real way, other than just like playing the cowbell in a mediocre way, And I half the time I fuck it up, and I can because those guys are real musicians. They're so good at what they do. So I just really like I have this major, overwhelming sense of imposter syndrome every time I get up there and do it, if I'm being completely honest.
Have you ever said that out loud in your podcast before?
No, I have not.
Nice. I got the good stuff.
And, when I shake my ass or I do my pelvic thrusts, it makes them laugh so hard.
Yeah.
That is why I do it, and I go harder each time, because the only way for me to get through it and also be able to like smile about it and not hate myself is because it makes them laugh so much when I like shake my ass. Dude, I'm not a musician, man. Like, and I don't know why. I know like it's harder. You're a musician. Outside is harder, and for whatever reason, every time we're at a festival or we're outside, I fuck it up every time. Every time. Not to the point like if you're in the audience and you're just a casual fan or something, you probably wouldn't notice. And people come up to me and they're like, "Dude, like, oh, a killer cowbell!" Like, it's great for the merch table, right? Because they're like, "Oh, you're the guy," and like maybe I sell some more shirts,
Probably.
and I'm sure it helps the band, and it's great. It's a great conversation piece, but like I really don't, and I really hate the attention at this point. Most of the videos I don't watch. I cannot watch them.
Interesting. Okay.
Is that weird?
No. Now some people, I mean, they will like the way they look on camera, not like I know lately if I get like videos or if people take photos, it's like you get older, maybe you just had way more IPAs for the last 6 months than you needed to, and you're like, ugh, God, I look like melting ice cream. Like, what the fuck? Then I find that my friend has an Android camera and he'll take a photo. I'm like, oh my God, that's a good, I finally got a photo. Like, so like more visually, I don't accept, but I love public speaking. I love getting on stage and being in front of people. So, but I know people that are so deathly afraid of that, or there's a middle ground where they're like, I'll do it, but it's like, I find I don't know. I just find so much comfort if I get on stage. I just am like, oh, this is my party. I mean, like if I throw a party, I want everyone to be comfortable. So it's like I'm trying to like almost make that happen in a sense.
I definitely know that feeling. Like when I was in, I think we maybe talked about this on my podcast when I had you on. Like I was in the drama club. I loved being on stage. I was in the TV club, and I loved like making videos. We would have the project for that quarter was like make a commercial, and I used to like I always had a video camera, and I would like film funny stuff. I went to summer camp and as a camp counselor, and we were always on stage doing skits, and I always loved that stuff.
Do you think you look foolish when you're doing the cowboy thing or the cowbell thing?
I think it's cringy. I think it's really cringy.
If you saw someone doing that on stage, you'd be like, ugh, get off the fucking stage.
Well, I tend to not have that mentality. Like
I do.
if I think if someone, it's hard for me to like say what I would think of myself when I can't watch the videos, like I said. So I find there was a time where I was. It's been almost 10 years now since I've been smacking the cowbell and shaking my ass with these guys, right? As I get older, I just don't want the attention anymore. Maybe there was a time when I did. Like I'm a middle child, so I certainly have middle child syndrome, and like I said, I used to always love being on stage. But so like when we do Christmas shows, I also play the jingle bells for like the Christmas song, and like I tried to pass off that duty when we did shows this past holiday season. As soon as like I got to the venue, I got there before the Piebald guys did. I was talking to the opening band. Oh, like nice to meet you guys. And I was like, "Where's the drummer at?" And I started talking to the drummer, and I was like, "Yo, man, like, you want to play the Jingle Bells for Piebald for this Christmas song? Like, you'll crush it. Like, you know what I mean? He wouldn't even have to think about it, right? It would be easy. It's nothing like complicated." And I tried to pass off that duty, and they played it during sound check, and they're like, "Dana, like, get up here. You gotta like practice." And I was like, "Oh no, like, so and so's. I think his name was Jimmy." I was like, "Jimmy's gonna do it." They're like, "What are you talking about? Shut up. Get the fuck up here. No, no, you're doing it." And I was like, "Okay." Like, and I did it, and it was fun. But you know what? I don't know. I just don't like the attention anymore. I don't know why.
I mean, does that ever help you like talk to girls afterwards at the merch table? They're like, "Oh, you're the cowbell guy," and you're like, "Hey, what's
I
up?"
mean, listen. I mean, I'm just brushing them off, Doyle. I mean, it's like I'm only one man. Ladies, ladies, one at a
I
time,
mean, you
please.
did like stop a tour and live with someone in Florida for like 2 years, right? Wasn't that? We don't have to bring that up.
It was.
You're on tour and you ended up meeting someone or you're talking and
Yes,
you're
that
like, I'm
was
in Florida
actually.
forever. I was like, what? All right.
It, it was for like 6 months. I was in St. Pete. That was through the Furnace Fest community. Oh, and Piebald, yeah, because it was the Piebald set, I guess.
Hmm.
But that is a rookie move. Piebald taught me. They said, Dana, you're not allowed to fall in love on tour. That's a rookie move.
Yeah.
But it happens to the best of us, and you got to go through it. Like sometimes you just got to go through it the hard way.
I mean, whatever, dude. I mean, the biggest thing that we would always happen, the biggest thing I always seen in with bands, again, this was when 20 some years ago when I was touring, where right before they'd go on tour, like a week prior, they'd meet some girl, and then they'd go on tour and be like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with this girl. I can't talk to girls on the road." And I was like, "Fucking rookie move, dude. Don't talk to girls before you get on the road, because then you won't be able to talk to girls when you're on the road." And it always happens, like every fucking, especially in my band, they always be like, "Oh, I got a girlfriend." I'm like, "You're a fucking moron." Because I mean, I had a girlfriend the entire time, so I was always fucking faithful on the road. The only thing, the last tour though, we were already like kind of we were pulling apart, and there was some girl in like Iowa City. We like made out, and I was like, I don't even feel bad because that relationship's coming to an end. I was a very good boy.
Mike Doyle is loyal.
Yeah, I am. I'm a very loyal guy.
I'm the same way. Like if I fall for someone, I'm into it. I'm into them. I like to think I'm a good guy, like,
Let's say it should be.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
Do
don't know how to
bands?
fucking.
So since you're on tour, and I'm really good at just like steering this, do you? Are bands even like are they even crazy on tour anymore? Or it's like even the bands that I've talked to, I'm like, talk about a crazy story. They'll be like, oh, I don't really want to say anything that'll be incriminating. Not incriminating. They're like, this wouldn't sound that great these days. I'm like, yeah, totally. But are bands a little bit? Are they just since they're older? I'm guessing they just want to get off the stage and go and like have a drink maybe, or just chill on the bus or the van and be like, I don't want to fucking go out and party. Or are there bands that live that life?
I mean, dude, I'm certain that there's all of that out there from one spectrum, end of the spectrum to the other. But from my experience, I would say even like with Piebald, right? From when I started touring with them till now, when I first started following them around, we would all get wasted every night. But now, like, Luke and I are the only ones who still drink. Like, Travis doesn't drink anymore. Aaron and Andy both have been non-drinkers for a few years now. So, like, even like, when I advance the shows, like, I've changed our rider over the last few years because it used to be like a case of beer and a bottle of like Knob Creek. Now there's no bottle of whiskey on the rider at all, and a 12 pack or a case of beer and like a 12 pack of NA beers. So I dress the stage, which is for those, I guess, who don't know. If you're watching a show, you see the guy who's going up right as the band's about to come on, and they're like putting water bottles and towels and stuff. I'll put waters for all of them and towels for all of them. I'll put like a NA beer for Travis and a couple beers for Luke, and that's it. It used to be like a beer for all of them, maybe like a whiskey on the rocks, and now it's just changed, and that's just been what the 8 years that I've been with them. I think it's also just getting older. Like we're all into our 40s or 50s, or maybe not 50s, but you can't sustain that lifestyle.
Yeah, I definitely feel the back pain these days where I'm like, I should really stop going out so, so much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've done some gigs with Unearth, which is the metalcore world, and those dudes still rage for sure. It depends on the band and just the situation they're in.
Actually, I have a funny story just about Piebalds. I think I was told this before. Years ago, so my buddy Tom Simon, I keep bringing up, we met going to punk shows in Jersey. He used to have a radio station in Pennsylvania at Muhlenberg College, and he interviewed us in like '98, and then we went on his radio show, and like we met through the years. And so when I was traveling around, he's like, "Oh, stop in Raleigh." So we really became a lot closer over the years, and there's been times where we've gone down. His wife's family has a condo down in Sunset Beach, and there's this. So it's just like 10 minutes north of South Carolina and then Myrtle Beach area. There's this biker bar there, and they have this jukebox where you can just use your phone and just upload a song or like, play a song. Every time we go there, we always play American Hearts. And it's like all of these biker dudes smoking Marlboro Reds inside the bar, and all of a sudden they're like, hey! We die laughing. So every time, even if we're not together, he'll be like down the beach or something in a bar, and he'll have his phone just pointing at the jukebox, and you just hear it come on. And it's just like our favorite thing to do all the time.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so funny. Because it'll be like people will just look around like, what the fuck is this?
What is that? Not Sync Tunes or Tune Touch.
Yeah, Tune Touch, like one of those things where you can just use the app and do that.
Dude, the worst is you ever like sync up a bunch of songs and then they're like last call and then they like shut it off. You're like, dude, I just
All
paid
right,
for
man.
like
Well, I
four
do have to
songs.
go get ready for this date. And since you brought it up, before I ask the last two questions, as I have started doing in the last couple of years or so, I keep forgetting every time I even say that. And it seemed like you were excited about this. So, is there a story you'd like to tell that you've never told in an interview before that you'd like to tell now?
I mean, I drive these fucking box trucks a lot overnight and you just see some crazy shit on the road. Scariest moment I've ever had was when I was driving for the story so far last summer. I hope this story is like good, but so I'm driving from, I think it was like LA to Salt Lake City or something weird, and driving like, cause I remember I was about to drive through Las Vegas. So what's that? The 15, I want to say. So
Something like that.
I'm driving north. It was right near the border of California and Vegas. I don't even know like exactly where it was, because when you hit that part of the country, it gets weird. Like there's not even town names. You're just in some like county, or it'll just be named after like a mountain that's nearby. Really mountainous, desert, treacherous terrain, completely dark. Like there's no lights, there's no nothing, and I'm driving on the highway in like the middle lane, and it's just me. And then there was this trucker, a semi on my passenger side, the next lane over. But he's like a couple car lengths back, I would say. All of a sudden, this trucker, he just keeps flashing his lights on and off. And again, I'm the only other one on the road. So I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, cause some truckers are assholes and sometimes they just, I don't know. I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? And he just kept doing it to the point where I'm like, do I have a light out? Do I have a flat tire? Like, is there something wrong with my truck? Why does he keep doing this? To the point where it was distracting. Like I'm looking in my right mirror back at him, like, what the fuck? Like I'm not even looking at the road at this point as much as I should because it was so distracting, dude. And all of a sudden, man, like I I look back at the road and there's an upside down SUV turned like sideways, taking up the whole lane right in front of me. I'm going what, like 70 miles an hour. And I was like, oh fuck. Just last second swerved. I mean, I would say I had less than a second to swerve out of the way from this thing. If that was so this truck, it was a 16-foot box truck. I was just hauling merch. Like the tour I'm on now, I got the 26-footer and I have I have all the production lights and backline and everything, sound console. So like usually I have a lot more weight on me. It was so close. Like if I had the truck that I'm in now, I would have head on smashed into this thing, dude.
Oh my
No
God.
question. But because I was pretty light and we didn't have much merch in the back at the time, it was just like driving like almost like a regular car, so I could swerve real quick. But yeah, some gnarly accident had just happened, dude. Because couple 100 feet up or whatever, there were cars pulled over, and then a few minutes later, I see all these emergency cars coming from like the Vegas direction, just zooming, flying, dude. So I don't know what had just happened. Maybe that trucker saved my life. I know his intentions were to help me out, but it was to the point where it distracted me so much because I'm like, what is this dude doing this for? There's a reason. They have those CB radios. I
Yeah,
don't.
he must have heard it or got called in from like ahead or something.
Yeah, they got those radios, and he must have just got the heads up from another trucker, like because this car was. I didn't see any bodies or anything, dude, but it was one of the worst things I've ever seen, and like I still replay that in my head all the time. And like I said, I don't even know what town I was in. I don't even know if it was a town, like, but I was trying to research on the internet for a long time, like every day for the rest of that tour. I would say even after that, like I just wanted to find the story. I just so badly wanted to know what exactly happened, if people died. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's morbid of me, but it still bothers me. I'm like, what happened?
Well, yeah. And so you swerve and just kept going.
Oh yeah, I wasn't stopping.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That crossed my mind for half a second. But what am I gonna do? I didn't witness anything, and I didn't see anybody like laying down in need of help, and like there were other cars, pulled over, and but do you see shit like that all the time? I posted a story the other day. I was driving in from Toronto to Montreal, somewhere in between, and driving through this gnarly snowstorm and 2-lane highway, and traffic was backed up just basically to a stop for a long time. And one of the lanes, you saw the truck was like, it was a semi, and the cab was like turned around like facing the drivers, and it was all like melted and just all fucked up. And like I see that. I don't want to say I see it every day, but several times a tour, a couple times a week, mate, sometimes a couple times a night. You see semis all mangled up or just cars smashed up, cars on fire. You see all sorts of crazy stuff. So many people responded to that, like, "Oh my God, be safe." I can't believe it's just like this is like a regular thing for for me. You see it all the time. I'm driving a lot of miles. Let's see, on this tour, my brakes went out, like fucking second show in. I noticed something. So again, I got the super heavy truck. You probably know San Francisco is crazy steep hills. Like it's stupid. So I noticed something in San Francisco after the show. I was, starting to head up to Portland and coming down to a stop at a red light, coming down one of those steep fucking hills that you see like those skateboarders bomb. It's like crazy. Those videos are insane. Coming up to a red light and coming down one of those steeps, and there's a car stopped at the red light in front of me, two lanes. So there's actually two cars, both stopped next to each other. And I stepped on the brakes and my truck was not stopping. And I was like, I started yelling. I was like, oh my God, like this truck is not going to stop. I'm going to hit that car. I'm going to hit that car. And then at the last second, like I just barely stopped with a foot or less in front of me and in between me and the car. And I'm pretty sure I saw panic in the car. I think the dude or the person was looking in their mirror because they started to like inch forward and over a little bit. I think they thought I was going to hit him too. So that happened. And then I keep driving up to Portland. Actually, sorry, there was one incident in between. I was stopping to get gas off the highway and taking an exit and coming up to a stop sign on the off ramp. And there was a car in front of me, and same thing. My truck was not going to stop before this car that was like at the stop sign. And it didn't stop. I actually had to swerve over into the next lane. If there was a car in that lane, I would have hit it, but there wasn't, luckily. So that was the second incident. And then the third was a mile from the venue. And I'm coming down a hill again in Portland, coming up to a red light like in the city. And the truck would not. And I'm aware of the brakes being shitty at this point, so I'm going as slow as I can. But even still, like especially coming down a hill, I couldn't stop at this red light. There's a woman crossing the street in front of me, and I knew I was not going to be able to stop, and so I had to swerve around her, run the red light, and she's like yelling at me like, "What the fuck?" It's just like, "Lady, I just saved your life. You don't even know." Like, so I had to run the red light, and had I not done that, I would have hit the lady. And had there been cars coming through the green light on the street that was crossing me, there would have been an accident, no question. When I rolled up to the venue, I just like put on it's got like the air brakes. So I just pulled the air brakes and my brakes were smoking. It reeked. And then the bus driver parked up in front of me and he came out. He's like, "Dude, what is that smell?" And I was like, "That's my brakes, dude." So I had to take the truck to Penske and like, whatever, got it fixed. And it seems to be working now. But, that's some scary shit, dude. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
this tour, this one you're on right now, that
yeah,
truck you're driving.
yeah, it happened a few weeks ago.
Jesus
you know?
Christ. All right, dude. Well, I'm going to ask the last two questions. Before I ask the last question, what would you like to plug? When you reached out to me, there was this new thing you're doing, so obviously talk about that. And if there's anything else you want to talk about, go for it.
Yeah, man. Well, again, first of all, I just can't thank you enough for having me. Been a fan of the show for a very long time. 2 Week Notice is my main podcast that has been on a bit of a hiatus because I'm always on the road. That comes first, so it's hard to keep up with the editing. But then actually I got a new podcast gig through the Furnace Fest community. I was reached out to by a music professor at Northeastern University. His name is Andrew Mall. He hit me up and was like, "Hey, man, I'm a music professor at Northeastern, and I got some funding from the school to do a podcast. I like your show, and I would like to work with you and create a podcast mini series on the DIY music scene, hardcore, punk, emo, the scene." We created this show. It's a 6-episode mini series that I've been working very, very hard on for the last, I don't well, this whole thing started last summer and it's now almost spring. Like, it's a podcast called Live Free or DIY, and it's a six. I named it after New Hampshire. When we were trying to come up with names, we were like, we went with like AI, or Andrew, Professor Mall, he searched AI. It spit out like 12 names, and there were two of them that I liked, and they were both taken. I don't remember what they were, and I was just like, what about live free or DIY? And whatever. I wasn't crazy about it at first, but yeah, I actually love it now.
Yeah, I dig it.
And it's a 6 episode miniseries that is produced and co-hosted by myself. The professor Andrew Mall is also co-hosted, and we have a panel of 12 amazing people that include, let's see, who do we have? We have Norm Brannon of Thursday, and Texas is the reason. So some Jersey. This was the scene, right? That's relevant. We got Luke from Piebald. We have Chris Wren of Bridge 9 Records, Ace Enders of the Early November. We have Joey, the frontman of Koyo. We have Brandon Davis of Vanna. But it wasn't just musicians. We also have like, oh yeah, Chad and Johnny of Furnace Fest. It's like not just musicians, but like photographers and promoters. And we got this dude, Jeff, who was the original bass player of Passion Pit. Awesome panel of people. So we had this series of questions that we asked them all pretty much the same questions. And instead of giving everyone their own episode, what we do is we like split up the recordings and kind of trickled them into each of the 6 episodes, which all have a theme. Like one of them is on the DIY community, one of them is on mental health, one of them is on the sustainability and resilience of the scene, one of them is on exposure, like what happens when you go from just like these basement shows and these nights at Columbus halls and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you have a band that starts blowing up like a turnstile or whatever. So they all have different themes, and we kind of just like split up the interviews, and we do voiceovers in between, and we've been working really really hard. I am 97% done with the production of this series. I just got to kind of do some last minute stuff, and it really has killed me in a way to stop doing 2 week notice, because it already really bums me out that I can't keep up with 2 week notice when I'm on the road. It's just hard to drive overnight and sell merch and edit. It's impossible, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm like, all right, I'll be home in a couple weeks and I'll catch up. And then like Alkaline Trio hits me up, and it's like, I'm not going to not do that tour. Right. So when Andrew hit me up, it was just like, oh man, I was on tour with The Story So Far. And I was just like, I can't do this, but also it's a paid gig, which I don't make money. I don't make money off 2 week notice. So, and it's something that I fell in love with. I really was dreading it at first just because I had so much on my plate. And then I really fell in love with the project, and I'm really proud of it. Yeah, it's called Live Free or DIY, and I poured my heart and soul into it, man. Like the thing was, it was more work than even he, and I think I can't speak for him, but I'm quite certain that his expectations when he hit me up was just like, I would do all the work and he would show up and just be able to like talk when it was time to do the voiceover stuff, and that was it. But it was like, no, we took the time to build each episode, and it required like hours upon hours of Zoom meetings, and building the episode, like listening to all the clips, because we split up the interviews. He did half and I did half. It was like, all right, what are we going to use here? Like, what do we want to use? What makes sense? And like coming up with a flow of the episode. So that is the main plug. Since I'm just about done with that, I am finally going to get back to relaunching the 2 week notice podcast. I've been sitting on some interviews for a long time. I interviewed Ben Jorgensen of Armor for Sleep last summer. I just haven't gotten to it.
All right, dude. Last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
I would say being participatory. I think that what's great about like hardcore punk emo is maybe you don't know how to play guitar like me, but you know what? Maybe you can sell merch. Maybe you can tour manage. Maybe you can drive the van. Maybe you have a camera and you like taking pictures. And if you have, if you like taking pictures and you have a camera, come to the show, bring your camera and start taking pictures and start talking to people, and cool shit's going to happen. Or start a podcast. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. Like just like get involved, being participatory.